The Endurance E-Racing World Championship Le Mans 24 Hours is brought to you by ESR Esports Network, Fleet Gaming, SimLab, Husingfeld, Simplexity, Acetech, and AMD Ryzen Radio.
Welcome back to Le Mans here for the GTR 24H EEWC finale. 24 hours of racing lined up here today, and we have 9 of them still on the clock right now. Just over 9 because we started a little bit past the hour, but either way, it doesn't really matter. We're still here for this race, still enjoying it as well. We've currently got Drillers Esports leading the way ahead of Seawolf. Net Race, that has been the case for quite some time, but we do have Dennis Jordan in the yellow flag. Has he disconnected? Has there been some kind of problem for the LMP2 leader? That could be absolutely massive if there has. Burst Edge Esport have had such a great day of things so far. I'm going to try and find them and see what has actually happened to Dennis Jordan. And he's gone to the pit. I think it's been a disconnection for the race leaders in LMP2, and I think the whole situation has just changed all over again. Dear oh dear.
Yeah, that's a terrible day out for them, and we were just, earlier we were talking with those guys, talking with Michi Hoyer, how safe and capable driver Dennis Jordan is, and they were doing such a wonderful job in the lead of the LMP2 category, and now they are out and we cannot see them moving at all. Dennis Jordan having a big number of issues. Now the good thing for those guys, if there is a silver lining to be found, is that they were 2 laps ahead of the 334 Fair Racing team and Chris Gonzalez, who is right now behind the wheel, so they still have some time. But in the case they have to reconnect, in case they have to reset their car, that's gonna be 6 laps down, and that's gonna be a difficult ball game for them.
Yeah, it's really disappointing for them after things running so smoothly so far in the race. I think it might have been the fact that we might have cursed them by talking to Michi Hoyer actually, but either way, Juice's Motorsport Club are into the pit lane with João Barbosa, which is a little bit early, I have to say. So Alvaro Martinez takes the lead of that category, but it might not be early, and it might be on time. We'll find out a little bit later on, see how long it takes for Martinez to come in as well. But I'm seeing yellow flags dropping up all over the place at the moment. Mathieu de Crop had one a little bit earlier, so did one of the ID Simsport cars. It looks like it's positively absolute chaos out there at the moment because of this rain that's falling and the fact that we are deep into the night.
Yeah, and now we're starting to really get into the gray zone in terms of conditions, where people just can't help but, make mistakes. Really, the rainfall has actually ceased too, and that's the interesting thing right now. It's not currently raining on track, but the track is really wet, and we believe it is going to be raining real soon once again, and people are now making mistakes, and maybe it's a mental thing, once again we're seeing those wipers go back on, so the rain is starting, and it's intermittent rain, it seems, at the moment, and that's the most difficult thing. Really, when the conditions change all the time, it's getting a little bit more dry, you start to push a little bit harder, then nope, it's starting to rain again, and you start making mistakes because it's once more slippery. And the ones who can master these conditions and keep their head cool and use the past experience and just adapt are going to make a lot of gains here, because now all bets are off. I don't think anyone's safe at this moment, not even if you have like a 2 or 3 lap lead like we have with Pinsim Drillers Esports, the number 10 car leading overall. Between 10 and 47 they have a 2 lap lead. I don't think that's safe at this point because it's just one mistake and that's out.
Yeah, no leads are really safe at this point, I would argue. Yeah, we'll go along with that. So Wojciech Polesny is into the pit lane, and he's into the Juice's Motorsport Club car. He's back out there onto the circuit, I believe, although the timing is still showing him in the pit lane. And he's 12 seconds behind David Greco in the Musto car. So he's had a long stop there, and that's a very short stint for João Barbosa. So I wonder what's happened to him. Was there an accident towards the end of that? Is there some kind of personal issue he's had? Maybe a computer problem or something like that? I'm not entirely sure, but you don't often see an under 1 hour stint for a driver, never mind even a fuel tank or a set of tyres in GTA. That is very strange.
It is. I wonder if it would be, computer issue where we know these rainy conditions can be hard on the computers along with night lighting, so maybe his computer wasn't feeling it, maybe he was getting some PC issues, or maybe he wasn't happy with the conditions, maybe he was thinking that there's someone else in the team that could handle these conditions better, that he's not cut out for it. That's a really brave call to make if he made that himself.
Yeah, it is, and a pretty selfless one as well, because obviously you want to be driving in there as there's a bit of a stack up on the exit of Corvette heading towards the Ford chicane here with the Simply Race BMW trying to get through on the ID SimSport one, or that's an Aston Martin, excuse me, but still there's hypercars and LMP2s involved as they bounce across the curbs of the final chicane and now complete another lap here at Le Mans. Prototypes are going to try and get through here, and there goes the hypercar, there goes the LMP2. They're both going to get him, and they're both going to get them both into turn one, and that is fairly easy, but this is an interesting battle now. Simply Race down to the outside at turn two. They're going to get the inside for the second part of this chicane, but hanging it round the outside, the Aston Martin had to run off the road ever so slightly to hold on to the place, and now down the S's they're going to continue to run wheel to wheel, but Simply Race and Olivier Fortin get that place ahead of ID SimSport, the number 166.
Yeah, they do, so that's a brave move to make at this point in the race, but it's also something about, not wanting someone else to screw up your rhythm. Oliver Fortani, we heard about their issues earlier, or we saw how Simply Race weren't necessarily having the best of races at that point, so, he's decided that, I do want to still run. I do want to still be involved in the battle, and I do want to see where our pace can lead us. And right now, he is going on a really good pace. The problem is, of course, there's 2 laps to the next car.
That is the real different disadvantage they've got right now, and it's the Juices Motorsport Club car, by the way, the one that has just come in. We saw that a moment ago. Wojtek Polesny is now driving it, and he is just under 11 seconds behind David Greco, and that will be a battle to watch a little bit later on, I think. But yeah, I don't think Fortin is going to be catching up to Polesny anytime soon. We'll find out though. Now, what is going on with Burst Sport and their LMP2? I can't even find them. Yes, I can. Dennis Jordan is now down in 4th place. So Fair Racing Team and Chris Gonzalez, despite not having one of the best lineups I've seen on the grid here today, in a very stacked LMP2 field, I have to say, they're now leading the race. And that is just showing that consistency can win you the race. Slow and steady does sometimes win, and currently they are winning.
Turtle and Hare, really, with those teams, they may not be the favorites, but I think they must be feeling really ecstatic right now, really excited about leading this race, and now just making plans so they can hold on to the lead of that race. They got 1.5 minutes ahead of Bojan Bogdanov, and we've known how much difficulty Bojan has had in that car. Mind you, he did not go for a break. He did continue in that number 17 Pinsim Dwellers esports car, and as a result of that, he's still out there. Will be interesting to see and look at the lap times between 334 and the 17. Last time around, well, we don't have data for the 17 at this moment, but I'm sure they could be a little bit faster on pure raw pace than Chris Gonzalez. So, mind you, Chris Gonzalez is not going exactly slowly right now. Last time around, he did a 349.8, which is really a respectable lap time at the LMP2 category.
There it is, and certainly faster than faster than the hypercar, which is just behind it at the moment. Mike Gottrip, who is in the Elite SimSport Racing Team hypercar, trying to make his way back to the fellow hypercars in front, but can't really at the moment. He's really struggling out there, as are all the hypercars, I can imagine. But yeah, Chris Gonzalez is running at a decent pace. Bogdanov has decided to stay out. He clearly feels that he can do a little bit better, as now Jordan has made a pit stop he has collected his thoughts. Now he's 1 minute 45 behind the next car, which is Filippo Caneo in the Drive Game Seat car. Burst Edge Esports 6th place. Who would have thought that just 20 minutes ago, before they had that big disconnection, the big moment in LMP2, and the race has been turned on its head. The cards have reshuffled really, and now it's really up in the air as to who's going to take the race win once again here.
Yeah, and those guys really, they have to just keep on their toes because everything around them is changing. It's the big change up, it's the middle of the night, everyone's having difficulties, and I mean, some of those drivers out there might be feeling, and I know that feeling that, why is everyone else doing so well but me? Why am I having all these difficulties? It's difficult for everyone. The difference is that some people can handle it and some people cannot. And we are really truly getting a perspective of who can handle it the best at this point in time. And mind you, this rain is not about to stop anytime soon. We heard that it can go all the way to morning, so it's not gonna be easy from here on out at all, but it is the great equalizer, as they always say in motorsport. Rain, it can be the great equalizer, and we're seeing that right now too. There you see on the lower left corner of your screen the weather radar, and that's just constant rain. It goes from Le Mans all the way to Paris, and it's like going all the way to Netherlands and Belgium. I imagine that rain cloud. It's not very fat, but it's very, very long, and it's still gonna stay there for 2 or 3 hours at least.
And it's not the heaviest part of rain. You just kind of see the blue bit. This is not very good weather reporting. It's not very scientific at all. But the kind of bluer bit indicates heavier rain, and it's mostly staying in the kind of green region, which means just ever so slightly lighter rain. Not that these guys are going to really notice, because rain is rain at the end of the day, and it's going to affect them throughout the whole of this race. For the remainder, I have to expect, given how long it took for that band of rain to actually get over to Le Mans, and we were expecting rain as early as sunset when we looked at the forecast this morning, and now it's changed all the way to after midnight through the right depths of the darkness here in France. So yeah, it's come a lot later than I was expecting personally. So you have to say, given how slowly it arrived, it's going to go just as slowly, and we could be under dark skies, and we could be under rainfall for the rest of this race. You never know, the clouds could clear up and we could get sunshine for the end of the race, but it's not looking good at the moment for those who don't like rain.
No, not at all. And of course, if you do want to get scientific, then rain is moisture that forms into clouds and then falls back on the ground from the clouds. So there you go. Science tip of the day.
That's a science lesson over.
Great science.
Well, anyway, you know what I mean. It's going to stay lighter than it otherwise could have been. I thought that really big, heavy part of rain was going to hit the circuit, but it is indeed just going to go north and actually miss it ever so slightly, which is, as I said, good for the likes of Michi Hoyer, who said he wasn't looking forward to the rain in particular. He's going to be a little bit pleased about that, but some of these guys are actually opportunistic and would have liked a bit of rain, and I think in the LMP2 category some of the guys will have wanted rain, even though we have seen the most incidents from that category. The opportunists lie in that class, I think, and there are a lot of guys who are now out of position and want to overhaul Fair Racing Team, who I still can't really believe are actually in the lead of that class. They've not had any incidents of note, and that's the real thing that's put them in the lead of this race. Drillers Esports have had to change their rear wing twice. ProSim have had their own set of problems. Pretty much you could list off a set of issues for all of these cars at the moment, but Fair Racing Team, the only ones who haven't actually had any issues, and that is the sole reason why they're winning, other than the fact they are actually quite fast as well.
Yeah, I mean, great things, diamonds form in great pressure and heat, and you don't get greater pressure and heat than this when it's 24 hours of Le Mans, when you're at the GDR 24 here at Le Mans. It's the final race of the season, it's the one you've been all looking for, usually a live event. Sadly not the case this year, but still very much broadcasted live and still the prime of their seasons. And you are in the car, you have to control that car, it starts raining down and everything's on the line. And you talked about opportunity, and that's absolutely what it is. It's an opportunity to screw up and really make a bad day for yourself and your teammates, but it's also an opportunity to shine. And some of the greatest legends of Le Mans are born in the rain. I'm reminded of 1995, for example, when the McLaren F1 GTR won the overall at Le Mans. That was a GT1 class car. They won the overall at Le Mans, and it was mostly down to certain someone called J.J. Lehto, or full name Jyrki Järvilehto, turning into an absolute deity in the rainy conditions of the night, and nobody could catch them. And that's the other things too that are born in the rain, legends that are born in the rain. And to master these conditions takes a very special skill set, but it's not only a threat, it's also an opportunity. You have to look at kinda in two ways. But then again, if you choose to take it as an opportunity, you have to be pretty sure and pretty confident about the fact that you can handle it, because nobody wants to be the teammate of a guy who's like, okay, I'm gonna be the hero today, I'm gonna be a hero, and then realizing halfway through the lap, hey, I've never actually completed a lap in the rain. That's a terrible situation.
Yeah, it is, and I don't think it's important to try and be a hero at this stage of the race. I think it's more important to try and keep it on the road and keep it safe until the sun rises at the very least, and maybe even the rain will clear later on. We'll find out, but certainly until the sun rises, it's better to keep your hero moves for a little bit later on, I think, and that's what most of these guys, especially those who are aiming to win this race, are doing for the moment. But in GTE, we've seen another pit stop cycle, I do believe, as Taylor Lane being off there a little bit, I think, but I think he's okay, as there are some GT3 pit stops coming. We've seen in GTE that the pit stops have already taken place. Alvaro Martinez is now out in the lead by 15 seconds over David Greco, and for some reason, Juices have managed to lose themselves a good 25 seconds there. They were about 5 seconds in front before the pit stop window. Now they're 25 seconds behind, so about half a minute they've lost there, and I'm not entirely sure what's happened.
Yeah, a lot of people are losing time, which is on screens the ID SimSport entry, the 199 LMP2 having 2 spins in the last sector alone, and now we have the number 64 as well in the 4th place in that class, having some great difficulties, going very slowly around the track. So a lot of people having issues. These conditions obviously very treacherous right now, and I do actually wonder, if it's so terrible out there, can you even do a full stint on tires? Will the tires last? Because yeah, the rain tires are very soft. They can last throughout the full stint normally, but if you are in danger of spinning out with a light fuel load, do you just cut your losses and pit every 30 minutes or every 35 minutes, or do you have to actually go on a really conservative strategy just to survive out there?
Yeah, exactly. That's the kind of conundrum that I think these guys are going to be suffering throughout the next few moments. Because these are testing times for all of the drivers out there on the circuit. That's why we're seeing so many accidents, so many incidents. We've seen Riley McKibben and the ID SimSport car have both had problems recently. Roy de Munich has been for spin along with Ryan Nash as well in the last few moments' time. It's been all going on in LMP2, all going on in GTE as well. Those gaps closing and extending out, and it's all getting very interesting. It's just hard to know where to look at the moment. It's kind of all happening. It's as I said, difficult to know where to look and where the next battle is really going to come from. I'd imagine it's probably going to be GT3 when Alexander van der Voorde manages to get past Simon Marshall in that Aston Martin, although he is going to find that pretty difficult because the Aston Martin is pretty awful in a straight line.
Yeah, it is, but it can go around the corners, and these might be the conditions that the car turns out to be actually quite good in, where it's awful in a straight line, yeah, but if it's more grippy around the corners, if it has more mechanical grip, if it's easier to handle, then yeah, in these conditions, suddenly what you're losing on a straight line might not be that much, and what you're gaining in the corners might come to form, might come to be really important. So who knows, maybe the Aston Martin is the ace in the sleeve.
Yeah, possibly in these conditions, even though if it is the fastest car in these particular conditions, it's starting with a 6-lap deficit, which is going to make things a little bit more difficult for them, I have to say. But you never know, because they've been up leading the race at points during this race. They were ahead of the DIS car once they had had their crash on the Mulsanne Straight, but now they've made a big... they had their problem while I was away, and now we've had another change of the GT3 lead for the fourth time. The leader in that category had a bit of an issue. This was a little bit earlier on. It's back to DSR Nightmare 777, and we'll see if they can stay there now. They have done for a few laps, so let's not curse them by talking anymore, because it's pretty...
It's a terrible thing.
Difficult. It's pretty difficult out there at the moment. So Van der Velde, is he catching Simon Marshall? Yes, he is. It's closing down to under 11 seconds now, so I think those two are going to be fighting before long.
Yeah, and a lot of difficulties right now all over the track. I'm just looking at outside of the commentary screen onto the main straight, and I'm seeing guys going 3 wide into the fourth chicane. I'm seeing guys, just completely missing their braking spots, missing their entries, and having real difficulties. So it's treacherous out there. But yeah, as you said, the Nightmare team, they've been doing well so far, but we don't wanna bring the commentator's curse down on them, and that's a real thing. No matter what you believe in, no matter where you stand on the issue, the commentator's curse is a real thing. But gotta say, good job so far. Keep it up, and certainly it is quite ironic that the Dream Team is having a terrible race and the Nightmare is having an excellent race. But I remember talking to some of the guys on that team earlier on, and I think they mentioned that the Dream Team is a Dream Team and the Nightmare is a Nightmare to other teams. So they have 2 pretty good teams in that stable.
Yeah, they do, and it depends on which way you look at it, really, but that's certainly a bit of a nightmare for everybody else out there on the circuit, Sim Racing Motorsport included. They're 2 laps away, just showing you how attritional it has been in GT3, and Monaco, despite their early issues that they had, are now into the podium spots again, with Ricardo Costa. Musto GD Esports, after crashing in the first hour, are in 4th place now and knocking on the door of a podium. It just shows that you can't give up in these races. You've always got to carry on to the end of the race, because you never know what can happen. Monaco were down towards the lower reaches of the top 10 after their problems. We know they're insanely quick, and if you just look at their fastest lap time and then compare it to those around them, they are incredibly good and could do well in a GTE category, even despite the fact they are in a GT3 car. That's why you should never give up. And 2nd place is a realistic proposition for them at the moment. 3 minutes is a big margin, but there's still a long way to go, so they could definitely close that in.
Yeah, I mean, it's less than a lap and you still got 9 hours remaining, so it's absolutely a realistic prospect. If you think about the lap times around 4-minute mark, you're doing 10 laps in 40 minutes, you're doing not 100 laps in 4 hours, surely. So that's a bit off on my math there. I think 40 laps in well, either way, you got a lot of laps and a lot of time to make up less than a lap of a difference, so you don't need to be that many seconds faster per lap to make it up. That was the point I was making. I'm not gonna do maths live on air because I know that my old math teachers, if any of them happen to be watching, which is a slim chance, but hey, you never know. It's 4:30 a.m. in Finland. They might be really bored. They would be face palming hard right now.
Yes, what did you say? 40 laps in 100, or 100 laps in 40 minutes. I can't remember.
10 laps in, 10 laps in 40 minutes because it's about 4-minute lap times.
It's not too far off. It's a very broad estimate, and I think these guys are going to use a bit more of an exact science to try and work it out.
I should hope so.
I should hope so as well, because it's a little bit more scientific than that. I would hope so. Yeah, but you never know. Either way, we know that some of these guys now are just because as the Nightmare team come into the pit lane, we just know that some of these guys are just lapping out there at the moment. They're running their tanks dry, coming into the pit lane, filling them up to the top, changing the tyres, and they're going out again. They're not worried about the strategy. And we've got to start talking about back timing the race. When does that begin? We're 8.5 hours from the finish, just over, maybe 8 hours 40, roughly. But when do you start back timing the race? Does it happen from 8 hours, 4 hours, 5? When is the optimal time to be back timing the race from?
From the start. You need to be on top of it at all times, really. You need to be watching, okay, how much we have left, and you need to change the estimate at all times. When I mentioned those Excel sheets earlier, as the former LMP2 class leader is pitting right now, that would be Dennis Jordan in the number 5 Burst esports machine. So he's sitting in the pit lane getting his tires changed and getting some fuel on board. Yeah, you need to be on top of it, and ideally you have a sheet ready with all the options, back timing options constantly, like, okay, how many laps do I need to do per stint to make it an X amount of pit stops, how much fuel can I use per lap. All those things are going to make a difference. All those things are the things you need to be exact about. It's an exact science, as you mentioned, and it's an exact maths, and you just need to trust the maths, and you need to, and often actually in endurance racing you are going to have to be really exact about how many laps do we have in this race. Are the leaders going to make it across the line 13 or 14 times, for example? Because that can make all the difference, especially in the last pit stop, because seldom do you get an exact full stint on the last pit stop. You might get a half an hour stint, you might get a 20-minute stint, you might get a 40-minute stint, depending on your category and how much the optimal stint is. So you're starting to think about, okay, on the last pit stop we don't want to take a full fuel load because we will lose so much time. Do we want to take tires? Do we want to take, how much fuel do we want to take? And it can come, a position battle can easily come down to that extra lap of fuel. But on the flip side of the coin, it's better to lose one position on having a little bit too much fuel than losing all the positions due to having too little fuel.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. I always find the problem, though, with back timing your race right from the start is that you try and work it out on what your strategy is going to be, and you get this amazing strategy that you think is going to be great, and then you have one spin, you've lost a few seconds, and it changes the kind of where you're crossing the line in terms of the lap timer. So you might be doing one lap less than you thought at a certain point, and by the end of the race that can change things. So I always find that back timing the race from the very beginning is not always a good idea, because it's so many things can happen, so many things can change throughout a race. So why would you try and back time a race from the very start if you could just do it from a certain point onwards? Because also there's not actually much you would do. I don't really see what much you would do in the first half of the race in terms of the strategy. Would you take a few what do you call it? Would you take a lap less on it?
Sector 2, slow car sector 2. On the run down to Mulsanne corner.
I'm just kind of losing my brain there for a moment. Would you lose a lap on your stint now? Maybe on your fuel stint?
Curves. Wrong Porsche curves.
Would you take a lap shorter on your fuel stint now to try and back time it for the end of the race, only for something to go wrong later on? I don't know. I don't know if that's the strategy I would employ, but certainly some of these guys definitely are trying to treat this from the very beginning.
Yeah, and why you need to back time it from the early on is that you might want at some point strategically, I mean, in terms of race strategy, you always want to run the longest stints possible. That's option number one. It always is. I mean, the more you can save fuel, the more you can go, the more laps you can do, the better you will be off at the end of the race. You will need to go slower, or rather you can go slower. You can afford to lose that time because you're not losing anything to anyone in terms of strategy when you go long. But on the other hand, at some point you can come to a situation, say 5 or 6 hours to go, when you are in a battle with someone you're battling someone for position. You are faster than them, but not fast enough to make an overtake stick because they get the position back on the draft next time by, and you're losing time. So at that point, you might want to, pull the ace off your sleeve, do that shorter stint, come into pits a little bit early, get yourself in some clear air, and work out the position for yourself that way. So that's why you need to always be sort of on the map about the strategy. But I agree in that, using that advantage early on would be a little bit silly unless you have absolute crystal ball about what's going to happen at the end of the race. But you know what I do actually have a crystal ball about?
Yeah, a commercial break?
Yes, exactly. You're spot on, Ewan. Let's go.
The Endurance E-Racing World Championship Le Mans 24 Hours is brought to you by ESR Esports Network, Fleet Gaming, SimLab, Husingfeld, Simplexity, Acetech, and AMD Ryzen Radio.
Simplexity is a Danish designer and manufacturer of high-grade sim racing platforms. There are 3 different levels of platforms come in a variety of colors and configurations. Choose from the V4, built from 40 by 40 mm extruded aluminium profiles, the V8 built from 80 by 40 mm profiles, built from 160 by 40 mm extruded aluminium profiles. Prices range from 470 to 750 euros. Go to facebook.com/simplexity.eu and start a messenger chat to inquire more about the options for colors and customization.
Games? Do you like esports? Do you hate watching laggy streams of tournaments on 13-inch screens? Oh my god! Of course you do. But you don't have to worry about that anymore. He has a jump, son!
Welcome back to the GTR 24H EEWC finale here from Le Mans, and we are into 8.5 hours to go. I do believe that we are really wrestling off the hours now, and getting towards the final third of this race. Now, we have just seen in the break, by the way, a huge incident between Simon Marshall and Alexander van der Voorde on the run down to Indianapolis. A huge spin for the older generation McLaren. They were having a great battle down into the Mulsanne chicanes, but they were also rubbing and bumping each other quite a lot on the straight, which is not really what is called for, I'm afraid. Not really sure who's at fault on that one, really, but it was certainly a big incident, and Marshall is very lucky to get away without even more damage than he's got at the moment.
Yeah, so you know what we should do at this point for the sake of entertainment is to pull the drivers from both those teams into the live commentary channel and then hear their thoughts, but I'm afraid we don't want to do that because we have too many sponsors, too many wonderful sponsors, mind you, and commercial partners and viewers who might not want to hear such insensitive content. But yeah, it will be very interesting to hear what the drivers think, but definitely a weird time to have such an argy-bargy battle.
Yeah, it is. And fortunately, that hasn't resulted in any damage for either of them, somewhat remarkably. So they can both carry on, and the battles are continuing in the GTE category now. We can see the battle for the lead is starting to develop, between Alvaro Martinez and David Greco. These two cars are starting to become a little bit closer on their strategy. They're starting to pit on similar lap times, and now look at the Ferrari try and get down the inside. There's almost a free wide moment with LMP2, not quite, and now he's right into the slipstream of Martinez in front. Is there going to be any defence here? Not really from the World of Sim Racing car. Now Greco, the Italian, down the inside. No point in fighting here, and it looks like Martinez knows that. He's just let Greco have the position and the race lead.
Yeah, that's what's done there. Brilliant job from David Greco. So he takes the GDE class lead now from Alvaro Martinez. And that's really, we saw the argy battle earlier on. We heard about some bumping and rubbing. Well, there was none of that here. Alvaro Martinez knew that he didn't have the pace at this moment in time to match David Greco, and there was no point trying to fight it too hard. Just to get into his toe and try and see if he can save some fuel in the draft. That's absolutely the right decision to make at this moment. And of course, that means the 53 Musto GDE Sports is now leading in the GDE class after being quite ways down earlier on. So I wonder if there's some difference in pit strategy also coming into play here, as once again we have a position change. Oh, that's just the hypercar passing them through, and that's the second time it happened to me today.
Well, he's passing one of the McLarens.
He's really flying.
Yeah, yeah, he's attached rockets to the back, but no, he's passing one of the McLaren GT3s, and we just got a brief view there. I know it's dark and it's kind of difficult to see, but you just got a view there as to how similar they actually look. Even though they are different cars, they are made by the same brand, of course, a really cool idea, the hypercars. They do look fantastic. I hope that they'll be balanced well for real life, and they will produce great racing like LMP1 Hybrid has. It's a real shame to see that category kind of go out with a bit of a whimper in real life, and I hope that hypercar will be come back, and the WEC in real life anyway will come back with a bang. Hopefully we get some more hypercars into our Factor 2 as well, because that would be absolutely fantastic. As you mentioned earlier on, they do look brilliant, and that's one of the main draws to them, and hopefully they will be able to make them drive just as well.
Yeah, I mean, just one example. The Aston Martin Valkyrie has a 6.5 liter, and okay, I'm gonna need you to hold back a little bit. Grab a tissue if you need one. That's for viewers and yourself. 6.5 liter Aston Martin's Cosworth naturally aspirated V12, producing 1,160 horsepower. That's, mind you, that's the street car. I'm gonna repeat, 6.5 liter V12. When's the last time we had anything like that racing anywhere, really? It's been 2 or 3 liter engines, it's been hybrid systems, and some of the hypercars use hybrid systems as well. But I mean, to hear the absolute roar of a big V12 engine back again on the top class of Le Mans, that's just gonna be absolutely amazing.
Yeah, there's nothing that really comes close to that. It does make a fantastic sound, that car. And the closest thing I can really think of in terms of how popular the sound actually was the older generation Aston Martin. If you remember, the other is Aston Martin again. I thought Nick Newcomb was going to come over the radio there, but he's just decided not to. But yeah, the closest one I can think of was the V8 Vantage from a few years ago. Well, not a few years ago now. Now it's only just come out of circulation. I think there's still a few knocking about in a couple of series. But yeah, it's like a sound that you're not likely to hear anywhere else, and it's that kind of unique things that really make the hypercar series. I think that's what they want as well. We need lots of unique, different. We don't want all championships to look the same, of course, do we? So it's unique. It's a new idea, and so far it's been very popular as well.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me, the hypercar era is kind of reminding me of remember the GD1 era of mid to late 90s Le Mans, when you had the Porsche 911 GD1, you had the McLaren F1 GDR, you had the Nissan R390, and all of those beautiful, beautiful things, of course, culminating in the Toyota GD1. So, you know, those GD1 cars that really weren't GD cars by any way, shape or form anymore, but those are some of my favorite cars to watch. I actually had, back when I was a little boy, growing up in Finland, I had a Scalextric of this figure of 8 layout, roughly, and it had the Porsche 911 GD1 as one of the cars, and it was the 1998 one, you know, the one with the bonnet was a little bit sunken in and all of that thing, and was in the beautiful white and red and blue and whatever was in the livery, and it's still my favorite GD car of all time. I love you Ford Aras 3100, but you know, that's the favorite GD car I have. And while I appreciate the absolute power of a LMP1 car, that was the top category for a long time, I absolutely appreciate what Audi did for the fuel efficiency, what Toyota did in that class for a long time, what Peugeot did there, but still seeing hypercars, just a name. Imagine being an 8-year-old kid and watching on TV, and what are those, and then you hear that commentator Radio Le Mans voice going, hypercar. And you're just, oh yes, you believe in rockets, you believe in dreams again. You can't believe, and that's very important. We'll get a new generation of fans, I have zero doubt about that. You know, just, you know, use hypercar in marketing as much as possible, because that's the most wonderfully 80s yet 2000s name for a category I've ever heard.
Yeah, it's kind of, I don't know, it's a little bit of a throwback, but it's also very modern as well. It's always looks to the future at the same time. It's a little bit weird to think about, but yeah, it's certainly an exciting prospect, and I hope it will pick WEC up a little bit, because in the LMP1 category that's is now really dying out, it has unfortunately really ended in a poor way when Audi left. It really started the demise of that category, and then Porsche left at the end of 17, I think it was, and then 18, 19 and 20 has been pretty miserable, really, if you're not a Toyota fan. So it's, I think to this day I will always cherish watching the 2016 WEC season. They had, you know, Audi, Porsche and Toyota were so well matched that year, and I just think that was great. But hopefully hypercars will be able to produce similar rivalries like that between different brands as well. I'm glad to see that shaken up a little bit. We've got some new different brands up there. I know the Glickenhaus are really pushing to maybe even get customer hypercars, which would be quite phenomenal as well to see. And I know that Glickenhaus do build some very exciting cars as well. We've seen the GT3s that they've taken to the Nürburgring. Unfortunately not able to win with one. I'd love to see them win it with one day, but they've not really been anywhere near. The best they've managed is a pole position and led after the first hour, but they really fall apart quite often. And when they do have the reliability, they don't have the pace, or the other way around. So I'd love to see a Glickenhaus at Le Mans and doing well as well.
Yeah, Glickenhaus and Koenigsegg, I think, is one I really want to see. I think they are thinking about building a hypercar, are they not?
Who's that, sir?
Koenigsegg.
Koenigsegg, well, I wouldn't be surprised in the slightest, but I haven't heard that particular rumour. By the way, just to go back to the race for a brief moment, Roy de Munich has had a crash at the Porsche curves. Maybe that dry tyre strategy in these conditions not quite working out. He's now lost his rear wing due to that accident, and he stopped at the Porsche curves. He stopped at the entry to the pit lane, presumably waiting for another driver to get in that car.
Yeah, he is now coming into the pit lane actually on live feed, so he is on the pit stall. But that LMP2 car, I tell you what, that has seen better days. That number 11. I mean, is there anything beyond the box on the roof that's like the original? I mean, the lights are working, some of the wing mirrors look fine, but the bodywork, that's been a hard lick. You know, I think that one's been over.
Possibly. It's certainly, you don't really have small accidents at the Porsche curves, do you really? So I can't imagine that there's going to be minimal damage from that. Although we have seen some cars standing up to some pretty tough punishment, I don't know of many cars who haven't had some kind of contact with barrier or car in this race so far. So it's been physical out there. But there's some decidedly crumpled bodywork beginning to show itself at both the front and the back of the field, actually.
Do you know what I would really, really want to see? A full-blown NASCAR team effort at Le Mans, because those guys can do things with bear bond, the type of duct tape, I think it is, that they gotta believe. So they would keep a car going just with that stuff, even if it looks like that. And imagine NASCAR affiliated, like Haas, for example. They have a NASCAR team and they have a Formula 1 team. So they could have an LMP team as well, and have a NASCAR pit crew there, and just have an LMP2 that's basically held together by duct tape at some point.
The problem is with that though, NASCAR is a little bit less focused on aerodynamics than I think the prototype racing at Le Mans is. I think it's a little bit more scientific in Europe than it is in NASCAR. But yeah, I do kind of miss seeing cars running around with loads of that kind of really strong tape on it. You used to see it in a few years ago, where you used to be able to put the cars in the garage after crashes and then send them out again with about 1 million, basically holding the whole car together with duct tape rather than having any bodywork on it anymore. But unfortunately, that crash clock thing they introduced a couple of years ago, it means you only got 5 minutes to put some stuff on it, which means that really heavily damaged cars can no longer actually be repaired. I believe that was actually introduced because of what's his name crashing out Logano once after having a crash earlier on in the day at Martinsville, and then somebody, I can't remember who it was, but they had a bit of a run in a race before, and then Logano got taken out, and so I think that they decided that really damaged cars who have no hope of getting anywhere near the race win, they decided that they shouldn't be in the race anymore, which I'm personally a little bit disappointed about, because that's the whole kind of spirit of motor racing, really, just to get to the end. It's an achievement.
Yeah, it is. Speaking of cars that are really damaged and cannot continue, the 13 Danish Racing League, the DRL number 13, was in the barriers. Earlier on at the Porsche curves. We saw it briefly on screens as well. They had a big off. As you said, no small offs at the Porsche curves. So they had a big off, and they are now, unfortunately, I think, being towed back into the garage, unable to keep going. So another casualty in the GT3 class, which is, of course, going to elevate the number 188. And I'm gonna attempt this team name now. Number 188, Teleforeningen.
That's what I would go for. Yeah, I think that's pretty much spot on. They're now in 7th place. I hope that Danish Racing League car will resume, and I hope also that, I'm not entirely sure about this, but we know that IDOS are out of the race after that crash with Enzo Fazzi. Carl Reinhardt, is he going to go back out in that AC Sim Motorsports car? I'm going to search down on that. There is still Calvin Reinhardt in that Discord, I keep calling it Discord, TeamSpeak channel, so hopefully he will rejoin, but it looks like we may have a couple of retirements there in LMP2. We're starting to see these retirements creep in as we get towards the real middle part of the night. This is proper graveyard shift time, in my opinion, especially in Europe and the UK at the moment. Maybe it's getting towards, you're seeing a bit of light at the end of the tunnel in Finland at the moment, but no, it is proper graveyard shift time in the most of Europe at the moment.
No. The sun is... I'll actually check that out for you later on, when the sun is gonna be up in Finland, but it's not yet. It's... Unfortunately, I'm living in the southern part of the country, at least, so I'm only at the 60th hemisphere. So that's not so bad. I mean, usually around late November, you get this wonderful bit, well, every morning on the newspapers, that the metro papers, I think you have them on UK as well, the free newspapers that you get on the, well, metros and the bus stations and whatnot.
Yeah, well, yeah, I can't say I picked them up myself, but
The logo, and it says Metro on them. So Metro, So every day you have the weather report on, I think, the second page on the bottom left, and it says it picks 2 or 3 locations. So when will the sun rise and when will the sun set? Usually it's Helsinki, which is the capital of Finland, and then a couple of other big cities. But around late November, it always picks the northernmost point of Finland, which is a place called Nuorgam, right in the Norwegian border. It's around the 70th hemisphere. It's way above. It's like 400 miles above the Arctic Circle, 300-400 miles above the Arctic Circle. So it's really far up north, and it gives you. The sun will set at X time, it's something like 2 p.m. it would be, around the day, and the sun will rise, and it gives you a date at the end of January.
Yeah.
That's
ridiculous.
Yeah, that's when you're staring out of the window, you're seeing the dreary November rain from the edge of the bus, outside the bus window. It's about 2 degrees Celsius outside. It's absolutely appalling, but you also have this idea at the back of your mind, a little smirk, and you think, it could be worse. Enjoy that, reindeer herders. So,
well, yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
That's got to be incredibly depressing. It's so dark for so long. I could definitely not cope with that, because it's pretty depressing in the UK in the winter, to be honest. No, that's complete. Yeah, exactly. Well, we do get snow, but I don't like it.
It's black.
But I don't like it very much, and it doesn't come very often, to be fair. Maybe once every few years we get a bit, but it's not that bad. And when it does happen, it sends the whole country into chaos because nobody knows how to deal with it. And then about 6 months later, everyone's melting alive because they don't know how to deal with 30-degree heat either.
And then they go to Spain.
I think we're just good at complaining, really.
Go to Spain for the winter, and then they will come back red. It's incredible.
Yes, we do come back quite red as well, actually. That's a good point. I can imagine the people in Finland do as well. Come back quite red from Spain. I can't imagine we're particularly tanned, for the most part, anyway. But obviously that's massively stereotyping. I probably shouldn't, but never mind. We'll gloss over that fact. But either way, it's still pretty dark out there at Le Mans at the moment. We're approaching 4 a.m. in the European time. And we're still up to Drillers Esports leading the way.
Ewan, I think we should do something we haven't done in our time together in the booth. And I know you're probably going, okay, where are you going with Trust me, we haven't had a position update in a few hours, like a proper rundown of the top 3 in each class. And I think with all the rain messing things up and all the positions changing, I think we should do just that for our viewers, as the 4th place GT3 car just came out of onto the track from the exit of Porsche curves and almost took out our overall leader. So there you go. But that situation has been thankfully resolved. So I'm gonna start with the hypercars, and then do you want to do the LMP2s?
Yeah, let's have a bit of a run through of everything that's happened and everything that's what the order is now.
Yeah, so the number 10 Drillers Esports car that's currently being piloted by Henry Sinek just came into the pit lane. They are in the overall lead right now, as they have been for most of this race, leading currently by 2 laps and doing a very, very good job in that car. Stellar job, and let's hope everything goes out right for those guys, because really would hate to see if something happened to them. But yeah, fastest lap of the race, doing the fastest lap so far, doing really well in that McLaren Senna GTR, en route to a victory here at Le Mans. In the second place, as of this moment, is car number 47, currently piloted by Ibrahim Khan, the Seawolf Netrace Motorsports car. 2 laps down on your overall leader, going to start another lap, maybe getting 1 lap back actually, now that the leaders are in the pit stop cycle. But of course, during the cycle, these positions, or rather this timing, will once more change. And in third place, rounding out the podium on the hypercar and overall category is the number 68 car. They are piloted by Sandro Ballesteros, and that's the E-Team Brit machine. Currently 5 laps down on your race leaders and 3 laps down on the number 47 machine. And over to you, Ewan, for the LMP2 category.
Yes, so in LMP2 we've seen an awful lot of chopping and changing in the final couple of hours. If you haven't been with us, it's been total chaos. Burst Edge Esport, after taking a real commanding lead into the second half of the race, had what we believe was a disconnection with Dennis Jordan. So they're now down to 6th place, which leaves Fair Racing Team to take the top spot as it stands at the moment. They're 13 laps off of the Drillers Esports car overall, but that doesn't really matter. What does matter is that they are a lap and 30 seconds ahead of the Pinsim Drillers Esports car. So they have got an almost 4-minute lead of maybe 4.5 minutes over Ernest Lappins, who has just got into the Drillers Esports car and just got into 2nd place as well. We just saw a battle between the 17 and the 007, with Lappins coming out on top. ProSim are in 3rd after having a consistent race themselves, as I'm just going to have a brief moment to look at Ryan Nash in 4th place, because he's been off at the Ford chicanes. That has been a story of the final few hours in LMP2. We've seen an awful lot of spinning, crashing and all sorts of things going on, but it's Fair Racing Team from Drillers Esports and ProSim in LMP2.
Indeed, and on your GDE category, the most contested category in the last hour or so, it is Alvaro Martinez back in the lead in the number 51 WOSR iZone Performance car. They are right now leading by meager 6 seconds. That's how close it is. If you're wondering, by the way, what happened to 53, we are getting to that soon. But Alvaro Martinez currently leading the GDE category in the 51 WSR iZone Performance. In the 2nd place, it is car number 74, piloted by Wojta Polecny, and they are, of course, the Deuces Motorsport Club. Just 7 seconds back on your race leader, and they've been in the hunt for that class win all day long. And rounding out your top 3 in the GDE category at this moment, well, that's David Greco. Don't worry, Musto fans, they are still there, the number 53 Musto GD esports machine, 50 seconds behind the 2nd place, about 1 minute behind the leaders, which can only tell me that they have gone to the pit lane a little bit earlier than the 51 and the 74, so we'll see how that situation plays out. But mind you, David Greco, for the last couple of laps, he's been the fastest driver around, and on that last stint he momentarily took the class lead. And finally, we have the GD3s.
Yes, we do indeed. DSR Nightmare, the 777 are leading that category, as they have been for an awful long time now. They've actually got they had 2 laps a little bit earlier on. It's now more like 1 lap and a half to Sim Racing Motorsport, who are in 2nd. Alvaro Inchalsti is driving that car, and he has been for an awful long time now. I can't remember the last time he wasn't in that car, so I'm just going to see who else is actually there. There's Francisco Torres, and Jose Maria Fernandez is also there. But so why they haven't been driving yet, I'm not entirely sure. Maybe they are in the same location and using the same account, I'm not entirely sure. But either way, they are 2nd, but they are being chased down by Ricardo Costa, who's driving the Wanaco 77. They've had a myriad of issues throughout this race so far, but now they are 1 minute 15 behind 2nd place, which is a great recovery for those guys, and it would be a great result for them as well if they were able to get that 2nd place. You wouldn't have been able to say that at the start of the day, but considering all the issues they have had, a P2 would not be unreasonable for them.
No, not at all. And you know what else wouldn't be unreasonable at this hour? Well, don't answer, because you're gonna know the answer. It would be a time for a little bit of a commercial break, and of course I'm gonna sadly have to say farewell or goodbye for now for you, even, because I think you're getting a couple of hours of well-earned rest at this point.